Now you're really frightening me.
Cindy, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today and coming and listening to me. My name is Cindy Lategan, and as Dion says, I'm an Agile coach, an Agile practitioner, Scrum Master, and project management. I've worked in the IT arena my entire professional career, which is more years than I like to advertise. And because I've been in the IT game, it's provided me with a very strong technical foundation, which I'm extremely grateful for. I've worked on various projects. Initially, they were all waterfall, and I can share some of those experiences if you want. But then it became Agile and Scrum. And throughout my career, in 2006, I was fortunate enough to join an international software company called Erudeto. They do a lot of stuff for MultiChoice. And I was trained internationally at their offices in San Diego. And that is where I became an internationally certified Scrum Master. And I was one of the fortunate people to have been certified by one of the founders of Scrum, Ken Schwaber. I've worked on many large project teams for multinational companies such as Billiton, MWeb, NASPERS, Old Mutual, just to mention a few. So today I'm sharing my passion, being agile, and I totally, it inspires me to coach anyone who's interested on the benefits of adopting agile principles. So, and by adopting agile principles, I think you don't realize how instantly noticeable the rewards are until you see it firsthand. So this session is not intended to cover every aspect of the agile methodology. It's rather intended to reveal, you know, you get these, you get this iceberg. I'm going to only touch the tip of the iceberg because there is so much learning and that will take a month of Sundays to get you through. So the agenda basically is I'm going to go through what is waterfall, high level, what is agile, touch on some of the ceremonies. I want to take you through a sample scenario. And there's always this concept that because agile became a methodology for IT projects, for software development projects, that you couldn't use it in non-IT projects. And that has been proven false so many times. So I just want to cover that. And then basically, can agile and waterfall coexist? So without any ado, without more ado, let's get straight into it. So project management is used in everything we do today. Anything from constructing a new skyscraper or recruiting a new staff member or creating a new online shopping website or planning a new a special event like a wedding. Project management is in everything that we do. So the simplest form of project management is obviously a prioritized list, prioritized task list. So the waterfall method is a linear and very structured approach. That has been around since the 70s. It's proven. A lot of senior executives prefer it because they feel they are in control. And it's very difficult to shift that mindset. Agile has only been around for the past 20 years. In fact, the Agile manifesto was only created in 2001 by 17 developers that met in Utah. So, but Agile has become the chosen methodology used by some of the largest technology companies in the world. Google, Facebook, Apple, they all are Agile shops. That's what they call it. So, now I'm not going to take you through the image that I've got on this one because I will bring it up again, but it's very relevant to the scenario that I'm going to bring up further down the line. So, in a nutshell, waterfall are used for larger projects, typically following a step-through process of, where everything has project phases and you're going to have to go sequentially one after another. And it's used like that, typically for good reason. There's budgets involved and everything has to be negotiated over and over and over, and eventually it is terribly exhausting, but to have a project successful in waterfall is a feather in your cap. Yeah, and my little cartoon here where it's saying, is it too late to add 4 floors to a construction site once it's started? It definitely is. You cannot do that in waterfall, whereas you would be able to do it if it was an agile project, for instance. So, as I say, the waterfall method has the requirements phase, the design phase, implementing, whether it's building or a building or whether it's building some code base, making sure everything works, and then goes into live situation. Now, Agile is a very adaptable process. And as the project progresses and new features are discovered and implemented, they can be implemented with ease. There's a way where the things are happening so fast in the business space, where you need to have faster time to market. You need to have a shorter reaction time. Something is not applicable anymore. So with the fact that Agile uses more flexible inspect and adapt process, and things can be prioritized higher, lower, as you going along from day to day. It's quite fluid, and it's really exciting to work in an Agile project. It has values and a set of values and principles which support this innovative delivery. And I'll touch on a few of those just down the line. So,
if I may come in here, and
sure.
Dear audience, I think the questions are multiple, and you're more than welcome, remember, to ask questions at any stage.
Yeah.
This adaptability of following an agile approach in project management, in a waterfall environment, we're very strict on settling on the scope of the project, and what is included and not included, and how is that different when you run an agile project? If you allow for scope changes through the rollout of your methodology.
No, okay, that's a good question. So, for example, when you have in an agile team, the exco, if I can put it like that, they're represented by a product owner. The product owner looks after whatever we are going to build. If I can keep just talking on a software terms. So the product owner will negotiate with the team and say, look, we had this on our project list to build. For example, maybe it's a teapot and I want a coffee pot rather. I'll take out that teapot and I'll put in a coffee pot. You must build that. So it's not that you've got an ever extending elastic band of project budget. It's a negotiation all the time. So your stakeholders are represented by the product owner. He has to negotiate with the stakeholders first and foremost. He mustn't disrupt the team. The team is protected and made sure that they can continue in a completely, how must I put it? There's no the words are gone. But he has to negotiate it with the stakeholders up to the negotiation. Then, when he is convinced that we don't need the teapot, we'll come back with the coffee pot. He then comes to the team. We would have a change discussion. If that is important to go live now, then you would take something out of the sprint and you would put that into the sprint. If it can wait till the next sprint, it just gets put on the backlog. So it's not a free for all. And agile isn't a silver bullet, but it's a much more flexible way of getting features. I mean, we all know we all got smartphones, and with the smartphones, the features are forever being added. Can you imagine if the camera was only black and white, and then somewhere down the line they decided, all right, we're going to put in a color camera with the phone. They have to be fast to market, otherwise they're going to lose the market.
It's a student that removed it.
Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
It does. And I think what you're also in essence saying is that although your approach to agile might be prioritized, you still start off with a justification for the project and a requirements analysis and a scope of work, and that agile then ultimately is just the way that you deal with change on the project.
But I think the thing is that it doesn't hit the team as fast as in waterfall, the team is involved right from the start, I think. You might, what we call have a sprint zero. The sprint zero is similar to the requirements and checking the requirements that they are feasible and they are doable. But the product owner is very involved in that. So, yeah.
Okay, 100%. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'll go on to the next slide. Did I finish here? I think so. So within Agile, there are completely different terminologies and ceremonies, or we call them ceremonies, but they're like meetings and things that you must adhere to. It's part of the methodology. So when you hear us talk about a Scrum team, the Scrum team is the focused, committed, and it's a multi-talented team. So within your technology, you'll have architects, you'll have engineers, you'll have testers, developers, you'll have designers. So there'll be a whole mix. And the Scrum team it's preferred that they co-locate, that they actually sit together in a space. So if you want to ask a question, you don't have to phone somebody and they're not at the desk. You basically turn around and you can speak to each other. The conversation happens and the team is protected. So you basically have a project room. An iteration is like a chunk of work that's been agreed on by the team, and they're going to work on that chunk of work for the next sprint. So they'll look at all of the things that the product owners asked you for, and they will say, well, we can do this, and that if we do this, that's the foundation, we can bring it through, and so they commit to what they're bringing into a sprint, and they say, yes, we can, in 2 weeks, we can do this, and we'll be able to demonstrate this to the stakeholders. And the sprint is a time period that the Scrum team works on this chosen iteration of work. So it can be 2 weeks, it can be 4 weeks. I've worked with different teams. 2 is definitely a good momentum to keep, because you don't get a slack off. 3 weeks works well as well. I found that in the financial institutions, they prefer to do a 3-week sprint, whereas when you're in a technology environment, they prefer the 2 weeks. Daily stand-ups are your most crucial ceremony to have. It's a daily stand-up is a meeting where everybody is in at the exact same time. You set a time, you'll say 8:30 every day. We've got a 15-minute meeting. And in that meeting, everybody must report what they did yesterday, what they're doing today, have they got any impediments? And so everybody knows what's going on. It's in the old days where everybody just came in, sat down at the desk, nobody knew what was going on. What are you working on? Everybody has their own ideas. Whereas the daily stand-up is such a terrific check-in point where whether it's used in an agile team or not, we actually found that our HR department started doing daily stand-ups because they saw the value in the technical side. So, sorry, my throat's getting a bit sore. Then a sprint retrospective is what's done at the end of the sprint. And you ask 4 questions. What went well? What didn't work? Are there any new stories or ideas that have been discovered? And what were the successes that we found? Did we find a trick to go and verify a person's ID number? Did we find a banking API that will go and verify that we've got the correct CVV code? Stuff like that, and you celebrate the people. It becomes a rah-rah if you can. It doesn't have to be. I mean, if things went bad, then it won't be a rah-rah. But it's very important to have these every sprint. Then the demo is actually to show the stakeholders where we got to in the last 2 weeks, discuss what they like, what they don't like, if it's still relevant, and then carry forward as to what you're going to be doing for the next sprint, and they give you the thumbs up so that everybody knows. It's a totally transparent methodology. So there's no hidden agendas. And I know I'm just talking about one team at the moment, but it's totally scalable. You can have many Scrum teams, and then the Scrum teams meet you can have representatives from each Scrum team that meets in a Scrum of Scrums. They, so it is totally scalable. And there's just so much to like about it. And it's really, goes down very well. So,
Cindy, yes, just before you proceed, and with reference to all the ceremonies that you have now discussed.
Yes.
If an organization, say, would like to introduce this way of work, how big a culture shock is it typically?
That's a
and how do you go about introducing this mindset to an organization? And before you answer that, I also want to take a question here, because it might be related to my question. Anezu, you're more than welcome to unmute and ask your question.
Afternoon, everyone. I think my question is also similar to yours, Mr. Barnard, because I wanted to actually ask with the daily stand-up meetings, because then someone could actually feel within the team that you are micromanaging them. How do you then make it seem as if now they're not reporting yesterday, today, and what's next? I just need advice with that one, please. Thanks.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective, Cindy.
Let me answer that question first, and then I'll come back to the organizational structure. So the micromanaging concept, it might come out like that, but it actually isn't. It's the team is in charge. The team is empowered. It's a team meeting. Only they are allowed to attend it. If they want to invite outsiders in, that's fine. But so it's not a case of a project manager is saying to you, have you done this task? Have you done that? It's not that at all. In fact, some of our daily stand-ups we actually do on the good old-fashioned Skype or WhatsApp, where everybody puts the what did we do? What did I do yesterday? What am I going to do today? Oh hell, there's that server that I can't get access to that server. Can somebody assist me? That's the sort of thing it is. It's not oh, you must do this and you must do that. It's not that at all, because the agile team is empowered and trusted. And that is the important thing. And that comes now to the organizational culture, because it is 100% difficult in these old-fashioned structures. It has to come from the top, from your exco. We've been into different companies, and it's been incredibly hard to get Agile and Scrum into companies that are stuck in the old ways, especially when the exco or the CEO, he wants to see his RAG status and his reporting in red, orange, green, and he wants to know, where we are, is there slippage and things. That happens in Agile, believe me. It does happen, but the team is protected, and that's why Agile and Waterfall can work together. You can have a PMO that is in the company that runs and reports on a waterfall for the exco, but from a human resources point of view, and from your that structure, the organizational structure, everybody needs to see the value of going agile. And you just need one pilot project to be a success. And then it will start, you know, you can say, oh, well, heck, we got this online shopping out in website out to the market in 2 weeks. Can't believe we did that, you know, and how did we do that? And then you've got to have a success story. And it's, in a lot of the cases, I mean, I worked at Old Mutual. Oh my goodness, that was really like pulling teeth, sorry. But it was very difficult to encourage the stakeholders and the senior executive. We had to have weekly demos and weekly sessions, and eventually it took us about 9 months to eventually get the senior executive into the correct way of thinking. But it's just perseverance and showing them where the successes are. So believe me, it does happen. The organizational change is a hard change unless you've got somebody who's championing it at exco level. Does that answer your question?
100%. Thank you very much.
Okay. So we've I set up a sample scenario, which, funny enough, it actually is taken from last year. So it's February 2020, and you're working for a company called Take Some More. And there's this global pandemic threatening to lock down the cities all around the world, which is threatening all the walk-in sales are going to be null and void, and very possibly the company will close. So your CEO has scheduled an urgent meeting and he wants an online shop created, and he wants it to go live for customers by next week. They've booked the marketing campaign for the new online shop, and that's going to be launched next weekend. So the question is, can it be done? Now, so I'm coming back to this graphic that I showed earlier on. When it comes to your agile, how would agile tackle this project, and how would waterfall tackle this project? So the waterfall, you would have to go through the planning, you'd have to get the analysis and create all the lists of the products that you're going to be selling, and then build it into the application and review it and check that that's right, and then you release it. So in the waterfall project, it could possibly, I'm just pulling months and days out of the air, but that could go live in May, for instance. Whereas in Agile, so now if I take a look at this with a bit of imagination, in Sprint 1, your infrastructure could be identified immediately that first 2 weeks. Your domain registered, secured, your landing pages, you know you're going to have a home page. In that home page, you need to have a login, you need to have register or login and forget your password and things like that. Those are things that the developers loved creating, and they can do it quick. You can't put it live as such. Then you need to secure your databases. You need to make sure that your domain is registered correctly and secure and everything. So say by Sprint 2, the end of February, you could actually have your homepage live, and your marketing campaign can drive people to that homepage. So here you've got takesomemore.co.za, and you're still carrying on business. You haven't lost any money. And that actually did happen a lot with a lot of companies last year when we went into shutdown. And you know, and so I'm not just spinning a yarn, it actually is true.
So the principle of taking to market a minimum viable product is continually
Yes.
front of mind. What's minimally viable? Let's put that out there as a first iteration, and then subsequent sprints will improve on it.
100%.
And as more information becomes available.
Yeah. So then you would build your product, say sprint 3, where you'd be building your product lists, making, you know, because you know what the common products are, but you've got other products that you want to sell, and you've got to push those. So there's so much creativity, and it's actually such a joy to watch the teams when they're working on something like this. They get so inspired, and it inspires you as a project manager to watch it.
Cindy, Abigail has a question for you.
Sure.
Abigail, you can just unmute yourself and ask your question.
I can't hear anything. Dion, I'm not hearing anything.
Abigail, can you ask your question? I think there might be.
I'm wasting everybody's time here. I have no idea why my PC comes up at Abigail, but it's Chris here. But I use Abigail maybe after 8 o'clock at night. There's a couple of wines in this equation. Anyway, it's Chris Cardozo. Again, not sure why there's the AC, but thank you for the discussion so long. I wanted to add a few things with the Agile, and I have to second what Dion said. It's strange. I've done relatively smaller projects over the last, let's say, 10 to 12 years, and I don't claim that I know more about project management than I really do, but it's been predominantly surrounding the waterfall. But over the last 10 years, what I've realized happened both in some of the instrumentation projects that I've done and construction, and I keep saying Leonardo Towers as an example, is that there's this tendency for scope change to happen, where guys, especially trained in more of a waterfall process, although they have certain change management in place, they tend to run a bit around like chickens without heads, because now suddenly the client is saying, I don't want these floors to be hotel anymore, they have to be apartments, or they're not apartments anymore, I want them to be shopping facilities. So, and then it becomes the contracts managers, sort of rummaging around trying to figure it out with no specific methodology to follow that due course. So I'm absolutely, and even in water projects, I'm involved in a lot of the water projects that's happening in the country. And you would imagine it's a fairly standard thing, and you would find out 8 months down the line that the government now suddenly wants to change the design or add more, and a lot of the guys don't know what to do. And I think Agile does give, especially in the waterfall side of the training, does give the guys a bit of skill to say, how do I plan ahead of the time with an Agile approach, meaning everybody's aware of it, because that's the problem. I think the problem with Agile, and I want to ask this in context of how do you budget for Agile? Because the problem with normal project management is, it's a straight line. I'm here and I'm at the inner line. We have a relative idea, but how do you budget for something like Agile? I love the concept, but I can see, and we've seen it in our training, even with some of the professors, there's a bit of resistance. They're like, okay, we're not going to talk about that now. We're going to leave that alone. So yeah.
No, believe me. So with to answer the budget question is, when you're talking about the size of the projects, the budgets become easier or more difficult. If I go back to the old mutual one, that was a nightmare because it was huge. It was a 3-year project, and the budget was set at the day one, and it had to be renegotiated, etc., at every half-year assessment. So you still have a budget discussion and fights. What makes Agile more tangible, if I take like a website, or if I take, let's see, let's just stick with the website. Everyone knows the concept. You know how many resources you've got. You know the infrastructure. You can clearly identify the costs related to it, and your budget does tend to become fairly good, fairly structured. And your resources are your biggest cost, typically, in those projects. So you'll never get away from the case that you may need to renegotiate your budget. Slippage was always my nightmare, to go and sit in a steer car and try and explain to waterfall steering committees that we need more money. That was a conversation I never ever enjoyed. Whereas from an Agile point of view, you can take away some of the features that are really not needed. So up front, you're basically saying, okay, this is what we think we're going to need, and it's be all and end all and whistles and banging. That's what we're going to develop. And slowly, as you go through that project, this functionality, was it a have to have, or was it a nice to have? Oh, that was a nice to have. Let's look at it next time. And so you're refining. You've got a nice funnel that you get out a real value proposition at the end, and you haven't wasted time and money on things that are not going to be used. So that's my take on the project. But I don't think you will ever get away from a point of view where you don't have to have budget discussions. They might be easier in Agile, but
yeah,
that's not, yeah.
And I'm gonna give Helen also a chance to ask a question just now, but I think that it's one of those classical places where, whether you are waterfall or Agile orientated, when the project is justified, the needs analysis is done up front, the feasibility is performed, you sort of need to have a clear and concise picture of what you ultimately want to deliver, and your total budget estimate must be based on that.
Yes.
It's just a question of working that from that budget backwards and say, okay, if that is the full Mercedes-Benz in terms of the website functionality, what does the minimum viable product look like for phase 1, and what does that budget look like? And so it's common sense must still prevail.
Yes.
Helen, please ask your question. You can unmute and ask your question.
Thank you so much for this informative session so far. My question is between the waterfall and the Agile. I want for starters to check if we do have perhaps a scientific measure that says, you know, Agile, you can complete your project much quicker, because I see the sprint 3 by March 2020 you would have completed, but in Waterfall, it will still go to May 2020. For starters, I just want to find out what is the reason for that. And again, that's 1. 2, what if you put on a Waterfall competent team, the very same in terms of maturity level, they are the same as the sprint. I mean, on Agile, I'm sorry, yes, on Agile. Will they not complete at the very same time? And if we say Agile, they might complete the project in terms of quality, time, budget on earlier than Waterfall. What are the benefits then of utilizing Agile? What makes it to derive value quicker than the Waterfall? Thanks.
Okay. So if I can, this little image it didn't end on Sprint 3 March 2020. It'll still carry on to May. But what this image is basically showing you is that in Waterfall, yes, you're right, we'd have the same competent people, we'd have the same product at the end of the day, going right through to May. For instance, let's say it all goes through to May. But what you must understand is by Sprint 2, that in Agile, the homepage will be live on the internet. It'll be waiting for customers to register, asking for email addresses, things like that. By Sprint 2, at least, you will be, for example, in quotes, you will be live by Sprint 2, by February 2020. In the Waterfall project, they'll be building and creating everything, the product lists, the shopping baskets, the checkout carts, everything, and they'll only be able to release the whole website by May. Now, my question back to you is, will that CEO be happy with the fact that, oh, we've shut down the country in March 2020, but I can only get my online shop live in May 2020? My answer to you is no, he's not going to be happy. So you know, that's the flexibility Agile gives you in a project. You can start working on something right now with very little. You know, yes, you need to know what the project is that you're going to create, that you need to get started on. But 9 times out of 10, the actual analysis and design, that takes forever. You know, before it gets signed off, then it gets thrown over the shelf. Now developers go and build that. Those days are over. You need to have a cohesive a team that works together, a team that they can sit next to each other and say, well, crumbs, no, don't put the login sign at the bottom left-hand corner. The customer's not going to see it there. Put it in the top right-hand side of the corner. You know, so everybody has, and they feel like this is their project. They feel like it's their product. They've created it. I worked on the project that in 2004, I think. MWeb created the first uncapped ADSL. I mean, now we've got fiber and everything, but then it was it was top secret. We had to work behind doors. all hours and everything. Every single one of us felt like this was our baby, you know, and it's because it was such a close, you know, we shared ideas, we were part of the decision making. And you need to have a very trusting, you must trust your team. There's no micromanaging of people. You've got to allow people to explore their creativity. You know, the first thing to make a project fail is to just throw tasks out, and people say, oh, well, you know, I'll get to that. Micromanaging definitely breaks resources, you know, and their spirit. Whereas Agile, I fail to see Agile projects like that. I don't know if that helps.
Thank you, Cindy. Oh, there's another question. Thank you. Somebody wanted to ask a question. Please proceed. No, Cindy, it doesn't seem like it. I think we could continue.
Sorry, maybe can I jump in there? Sorry. Okay,
yes,
so we are definitely running a very agile shop, and all our projects I've been, just because I don't like being document heavy, so I prefer not to do all the scope of work and all of that. So I've been pushing quite hard on that agile front, and we've been making good progress. But something that we're struggling with, in your previous slide you had with the 3 sprints, is if it is a larger project and we have a smallish sort of, we also do the cross collaboration teams with the designers and the testers and engineers and devs all together, but we struggle from the get-go to tell them when that end date would be, because we have multiple other work creeping in, there's multiple projects, but we only have like limited resourcing available, so I can't quite give an end date, and we don't quite know at the beginning how much we will get done in each sprint to say, is it going to take 4, 6 or 10 sprints?
Oh, you have my sympathy. No, that is very true. So let me just step back a bit. The one thing that you said is that your resources get pulled off left, right, and centre. Now that is such a common thing that they obviously have to jump onto production stuff, or they have to help with something else. You know, that is a typical problem, and so you can never account for 100% of their time on your project. It's normally about 70% of their time will be focused to your project. The best way that I can say to you is your backlog. Are you in an IT environment? It sounds like you are.
Yes, fintech. Yes.
Yeah. So your backlog is your best friend in that respect, because once they have sized every single story in that backlog, and you can take the velocity from the team and work it out, you can say to them, I'm only going to schedule 70% of the time. If your exco wants you to deliver before, because that's normally the case, where they say, no, I want it by end of June 2021, and that's it. It's non-negotiable. Well, guess what? They're going to have to put extra sprint teams in, because if you can physically in a spreadsheet, a graph, or whatever. I remember having a discussion with one of our senior excos, and he was adamant that we could do this project by the end of the financial year. We had to get it in by the end of the financial year, but it was something like, I think it was 800 weeks or something. It was huge. And you know, so you just show them with a simple spreadsheet and say, well, okay, that's 800 weeks. These many resources, works out to how many months, and you want it when. You know, it's they will always push you. That's their job. But you need to push back. As the Scrum Master, you have to push back, and you have to protect the team. And if it means that you need to get another team, you've got to fight for another team to be put on that project. Because that's how you do it. I mean, how do you slice an apple? You can only slice it so many.
Only so many hours in a day.
Exactly. And unfortunately, they will push.
Yeah. You happy, Iris?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good.
We've basically just confirmed that you have a challenge.
Yes, thank you.
Believe me, I've been there, done that,
More
got the scars.
4 hours in a day. I'm cognizant of time here, Cindy. Do you have an additional 5 minutes for us on your schedule?
So I can go past this one. I'm basically at the end. So this, I was just going to show you the framework, but it sounds like a lot of I've taken you through this already.
So there's another comment question, firstly from Anezu, and she says, can I assume that sprinting is a milestone and Agile is therefore milestone driven? Is that a fair comment?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, because, you know, we talk about sprints in Agile, correct? We don't talk about phases, whereas in Waterfall you talk about phases. So yes, I suppose you can say there are certain milestones. The trouble is, I prefer not to, because sprints, you just call them sprint 1, sprint 2, or sprint X, sprint 12, whatever. You do not know what that sprint is developing, because the team itself, the autonomous team itself, chooses what they're putting in there. So you can't put it onto a Gantt chart. You can say sprint 1 finishes then and sprint 2 finishes then, but you don't know what the team has produced for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely it does.
Okay. So, all right, let me go past this. So using Agile in non-IT projects, it's taken me a while, but really, typically, wherever a large chunk of work needs to be broken up into smaller projects, you can use it. So, for example, if you've got, and I don't know how many students are in the discussion, but if you've got a university thesis that you've got to produce for your professor, say, for example, he's given you, he wants 50 pages done in 4 months. Now, if you're going to do just that 50 pages and carry on until the end of the 4 months and hand it in, you're not going to know whether your professor's happy with that or not. Whereas if you took that thesis and you split it up into little smaller chunks, into smaller sprints, 2-week sprints or 3-week sprints, and every 3 weeks or every 2 weeks, you book some time with your professor and say, am I on the right track? Do you think this, you know, so you almost like do a demo and a discussion point and say, well, I'm carrying on this road, because you get to the end of your 4th month and crumbs, guess what? I missed the boat. So that's one thought. A lot of charities and organizations, non-profit organizations, do Agile on the fly. You know, for example, if you've got communities that their houses are burnt down, you don't plan the constructions. You don't plan it. You want to make sure that the people that don't have homes can move into a community hall and they can start. So Waterfall doesn't work in that aspect. So there's Restaurants and hotels as well. They work with a lot of agile, whether you realize it or not. So there's many more. This is just a little acronym I use. Agile, your A for adapt, you're continually inspecting and advancing. G is for grooming, making sure that your requirements are groomed. Iterate, take that large, scary project like your thesis and break it into smaller chunks. Launch and learn, same as inspect and adapt, and what works well and what didn't work well. And E for empower, empower your teams. Trust your teams, their successes and their creativity. Everybody has that drive and that passion to be valued. So empower your teams. And last is, can Agile and Waterfall coexist? And they definitely can. I see it often with the PMO officers, that you've got to do certain reporting and projects, and there's so many formal structures that they will just never let go. But they prefer to run with Agile, but report in a PMO waterfall way, which it's a real pain in the neck. I'm sure I'm sure that Helen will agree with me there. But yeah. So, and yes, so that's me. I just hope that this tip of the iceberg, the Agile iceberg, has inspired you to introduce agility into your world. And I hope you can find ways to go into it. Even your family, you can get your children, your brothers, your sisters, do chores. There's lots of things.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before I conclude the session, any final questions for Cindy from the audience? You can just unmute and speak. Nothing. All right. Cindy.
Yes,
yeah, I think my impression and my appreciation for the world of Agile as a methodology has always been in the sense that the less you know and the more you have a lack of clarity of exactly concrete measurable outcomes, where exactly you want to end up, then Agile is the perfect vehicle to create that minimum viable product, reduce the investment risk, managing the uncertainty, so that as you progress through your project and more information becomes available, that you have built a minimum viable product that you can align and adjust as you go along, instead of investing in a full-blown design up front, then investing in the full development only to end up with a product in a world where the context have changed. The product isn't necessarily built not to specification and incorrect. It's just not fit for purpose anymore because the context has changed. And the nature of the project will ultimately then determine what is best suited. And my second sentiment that I've always had is there's so much good common practice. The fact that you run sound communication, that it's transparent, that it's collaborative, and everybody can contribute all the time. The fact that you involve your people and you value the people and their contributions, I mean, that's just good management practice. And it
it's
doesn't necessarily need to fall under an agile brand. You can run the same principle in your waterfall project as well.
Yeah. No, it is also there's a saying where you fail fast and fail often, and
Yeah.
Agile totally supports that. And to me, what makes me so passionate about Agile is the fact that you can see it on a daily basis working, and if there's something that's just not right, you, as a leader, you can jump in and say, okay, let's fix this. It's so easy. It's I wish all my career had been done in this. But yes,
Absolutely
I'm a
fabulous.
total advocate of it. Sorry.
No, absolutely.
I'll
Cindy,
get off my soapbox now.
it was such a pleasure to have you,
Thank you so much.
address our audience today. And then I really want to thank you for the time and the effort that you went into preparing,
Thanks.
and definitely all the value that you've added, and that people definitely walk away from this session being better informed, because ultimately that's what it's about. Better informed, more aware, and that there's a tool now in their toolkit that they can go and have a conversation with at their office. So thank you. Keep up the good work.
If that's what I've done, if I've lit just a tiny little fire, I'll be very happy.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So from my part and from the audience side, thank you so much for your contribution. It's really valued.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Have a nice day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Leon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.